Hi, welcome to the channel to Rational. I'm Pranay Sharma and in this video we are going to learn for loop in R programming. This is part of a series where we are learning basics of R programming using RStudio. If you have not checked out the previous videos, I will encourage you to do so. Let's get started. In R programming, loops helps us execute the same code again and again without writing the code multiple times. The first loop that we are going to study is for loop. In this for loop, we specify a sequence at the beginning. And for each item in that sequence, this for loop will run again and again. So first thing it will check is whether the last item has reached. If it has reached the last item, then it will exit the loop. But if it has not reached the last item, it will execute the statement. So if the sequence contains 5 items, this statement will be executed 5 times. This is the algorithm. Now let's talk about how we execute it in R programming. So the basic structure, we start with a for, and in round bracket we'll write a variable in a vector, and then we put a curly bracket in which we'll write a statement which needs to be executed. So this for loop is going to run for each value of this vector. I'll give you an example. Say for I in 1:5, and in the statement I'm going to print paste I is, and I will paste the value of I. So now it is going to give me the value of I 5 times. Let's run this. Here you can see that it ran it 5 times and it says I is 1, I is 2, I is 3, I is 4, I is 5. So this is an advantage we can take in for loop, that each time when for loop runs, it will change the value of I. Whatever vector we give here, it will take the value of I from this vector. And in our code, if we have I, you can see here the value keeps on changing. So this is called as an iterative code. That means each time the value of I is changing by 1. Or iterating by 1. So let's talk about the advantages of for loop. So we'll say the first advantage is very simple, that we can run the loop for a specific number of time. That is specifically the number of values in vector, the vector that we have specified here. And the second advantage, the variable will take the values from the vector each time for loop runs. Each time for loop runs, so the variable will take the value from the vector each time for loop runs. So this can help us change the code each time. So each time the code will change slightly because we'll change I value each time. This vector here can be anything. Here I directly chose the values 1 to 5. I can have a vector, let's say x, that has strings. Let's say banana, apple, mango, kiwi. Okay, so I've just written some name of fruits, and now I can use for loop. Say I in x, this is the vector that I have given, and the statement that I am going to write, I'll say print paste the fruit is, and one by one I will take each one of those values, so that is I. Now if I run this, here you go, the fruit is banana, the fruit is apple, the fruit is mango, the fruit is kiwi. So it took these values one by one from this vector, and each time I can use that to change the code slightly. Let's take an example. So in this example, find the integers that are divisible by 2 or 3 and are between 100 and 500. First, let's find out how we are going to check whether a value or a number is divisible by a given number. So when we were learning the basic functions, we talked about a function called modulus. So let's say I have 5, percentage, 3. This will give me nothing but the remainder when I divide 5 with 3. So when I press Ctrl Enter, I get a 2, because 5 divided by 3 should give me a remainder 2. Now if 5 was divisible by 3, then this remainder would be 0. So if I say double equal to 0, that means I'm comparing whether these two are equal. That means the remainder here, whether it is equal to 0. When I press Ctrl Enter, I get false, because the remainder is not 0. But if I check for 6 modulus 3, this will be true, because 6 is divisible by 3, the remainder will be 0. So this is a very easy way of checking whether a number is divisible by another number. Again, if I have, let's say 8, if I run it, I get a false. But I want whether a number is divisible by 2 or whether a number is divisible by 3. So I can definitely put 2 here, and I can check it for 3 as well. I can say 8 modulus 3 double equal to 0. And I will put a logical operator here, or that is going to be a straight slash. So this will check whether 8 is divisible by 2, and this will check whether 8 is divisible by 3, and the logical operator that we are using here is OR. That means only if the number is not divisible by both the numbers, I am going to get a false. So when I run this, 8 is divisible by 2, so I get true. I can check 9. 9 is divisible by 3 but not 2. When I run this, I still get a 2, true. If I check 12, 12 is divisible by both. If I run this, I get a true. But only for a number that is divisible by neither. Let's say 13. 13 is not divisible by 2 or 3. I will get a false. So this is a method by which I can figure out whether a number is divisible or not. Next, I want to check all the numbers between 100 and 500. So I will start a for loop. Let's say for I in 100 to 500. This is the vector. I have to check. I'll say if I, because I will take each of those numbers. So if I modulus 2 double equal to 0 or I modulus 3 double equal to 0. So I'm checking whether the modulus is 0 or not for each one of them. If that happens, then I should write a statement. Then if I is divisible by 2 or 3, I need to store it in some vector. So let's say VC is equals to, first of all, I need to define the vector here. VC is equals to, you can start with 0, you can start with something, but I'll just write null. That just tells us that I am starting with a blank object. So vector is a combination of existing vector VC, comma, this new number I. This way, what happens is, when I have stored a few values already in VEC, the next value when I am storing, it is creating a combination of the existing vector and then this another value I. So when I start with a null vector, the first value that I am getting is actually going to be 100 because it is divisible by 2. So now when I am adding the second number, that is going to be 102 because 102 is going to be divisible by 2. So I need the existing value and then add to that the next value that I am trying to find. So we are going to combine the existing vector with the value that is divisible by 2 or 3. If this statement is false, I don't need to do anything. I just need it to go back and check the next value. So I don't need an else statement. I'll run this. And here you go. You can see this vector that has 100, 102, 104, then 105, 106 and so on. So there are 267 values between 100 and 500 that are divisible by 2 or divisible by 3. I don't need this statement. It is not part of my answer. So this would be the answer here. Let's take another example. So in this example, find the first 10 natural numbers divisible by 5 and 7. So when I say divisible by 5 and 7, you can directly check whether they are divisible by 35 and you will get the answer. But we are going to use the logical operator like we did here. Now the problem here is that I just need the first 10 natural numbers. If I don't use any mathematics, it will be very difficult for me to know how many numbers to check. And that is going to be very important for a for loop. I need to know how many times do I need this for loop. Because I know a number that is divisible by 5 and 7 is nothing but a multiple of 35. The last value here is going to be 350. So I can use that knowledge and make a for loop. I'll say for I in 1 to 350. And then I will check. I'll say if I modulus 5 double equal to 0 and I want and I modulus 7 double equal to 0, then I need to run. Let's say I will make VEC2 second vector. VEC2 is null. So I'm defining VEC2 here. I'll say VEC2 must be equal to a combination of existing VEC2 comma I. Now I can run this. Now I have VEC2 that has 10 integers. So here I had to use some of my knowledge to understand how many values do I check for. If I didn't want to use that, I will have to use something called as a break. So for this same thing, so let's start with the vector where we are going to store the values. So I'll say VEC3 is null. I have defined it. Now I'll say for I in 1 to 1000 because I don't know how many values to check. So I'm checking first 1000 values because I don't know when will I get the first 10 values. Now there should be a check. I'll say if length of VEC3 double equal to 10. That means as soon as I get that length of VEC is 10, then break. Break is a statement that disrupts the loop in which it is running. So here I have a for loop, and if I write break here, that means it will break this for loop and will not let the for loop go any further. So as soon as I see that the length of this vector 3 is equals to 10, then I want it to break this loop. What loop? I need to check if this I is divisible by 5 and I is divisible by 7. This is what we need to check. If this happens, if it is divisible, I want to store it in the vector. So I'll say VEC3 is nothing but combination of the existing VEC3 comma this value I. Now I run this. You will see here VEC3 again has the 10 values 35, 70, 105, 140, 175. So even though we were going to go for the first 1000 values, it stopped after 350. We can check VEC3. The last value here is 350. That is because as soon as the length of VEC3 became equal to 10, we used break. That means we stopped this for loop. There are other ways to solve this question. There is a while loop that we are going to study in the next video. So I hope this clears the structure of a for loop, and we are going to use that a lot in statistical analysis. That's it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.